Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel of Truth, Trust and Transparency. Today we're going again on another deal review. This one was actually from a very lovely email that I got sent. I'm going to read it out to you guys and then I'm just going to go through. This particular person wants a bit of a review on a property they're looking at purchasing. It's a live deal, so promise me by watching this you won't take it. But let's run through it. It said, "Hi Davey, hope you're well. I've been following your YouTube channel for a while now and I just wanted to say how much I appreciate your videos. They're always so informative and I find your property breakdowns especially helpful. The advice you give is invaluable." Perfect. That's why I'm doing them. So that is good to know. "I'm currently looking into a property that would love to get your expert opinion on. The property is located at," and we'll go through it, "and I'm ready to hear your thoughts. I'm a bit uncertain about the property due to the steep block it sits on. I'm concerned that it might require more upkeep and maintenance that I'm prepared for, and I'm unsure if that would pose any issues long term. I'd really appreciate your insights on the pros and cons of buying a property with this type of slope in the area. Your review would definitely help me feel more confident about my decision. Thanks again for all the great content you create. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Kind regards, Nancy." Nancy, really appreciate the email and the time you've taken to write it and thank me for watching my content. So the least I could do is to review this property and send it back to you, and hopefully there's a little bit of insight, maybe one or two things that you hadn't thought about or picked up that can help you in regards to making an informed decision on this one. Again, if you are like Nancy, you've got a deal, I'm pretty easy to find. You can email me, you can DM me on Instagram, and we can go and you can send it to me and I can do one of these videos. Or if you are getting plenty of education from these, all I'm asking you is you hit the subscribe button. 2,500 by the end of the year. You guys know the drill. We're almost at 1,000, so I'm getting there. I'm 40% of the way there almost. So would really appreciate it. And without further ado, let's jump straight into this one for Nancy, and I'll tell you my honest thoughts. Alrighty. So the first thing we like to do is we look at the suburb data, then we get into the intricacies of the asset itself. Now, North Mackay, Queensland, typical price of 620. The interesting thing about North Mackay is that in the past year, it has received 22% in growth. In the last 3 years, it has received 60% in growth. In the last 5 years, it has received 90% in growth. And then in the past 10 years, 100%. So my first observation is that this particular suburb has had quite a run over the last 5 years. It's done in 5 years almost the same as what it's done in the last 10. So it tells me it's had a great big run the last couple of years. My first question to you, Nancy, is going to be, what is the strategy you need to think about? What is the strategy of this particular property? Because if it's a long-term hold, then we need to think about the fact that, all right, if it's just had this run, are we buying in at a time where it's going to have those next 5 years that it doesn't do too much? You know what I mean? So we've already sort of missed a lot of that growth run. At 22%, if that is what it has grown in 1 year, then I can guarantee you that, there will be some sort of double-digit growth for the next year. And the reason is, and let's have a look at it. Let's dive into it a little bit more detail. So I'll start from the top. North Mackay, 620,000 typical price. We've seen that 22% growth. So you have missed a lot of the run if you haven't bought here already. Quite low on RCS, not great, but Mackay regional, Queensland, that's probably what I would expect. I mean, it is decent sized population and dwellings. I know there's a bunch of other North Mackay. You've got Mackay, Beaconsfield. You've got all these surroundings. So I'm not too worried about population or dwelling size. Infrastructure spend. Now, one of the main things that I'm looking at is our growth rate cycle. So as we know, in the past 5 years, we look at from 2020 onwards, we've had, past 5 years, we've had 90% growth. So here we've had, we're having 7 to 8%, and then we've had this massive run. Now, here's the thing, and this is why I ask you about your strategy, Nancy, because it seems that we're at sort of this peak here at 22%. Now, tomorrow, it's not going to drop down to 5% tomorrow. You'll have a year of this sort of growth here where it might taper off a little bit, where you might get 10, 12% growth on your money. But then we got to think about what happens into the future. What happens into the future after, let's just say you buy for 600. You get 10% of growth, or you get 15% of growth. It could be $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 of growth. Then we're returning back to, are we going to return back to sort of a 5, 6, 7%? And does that fit into your strategy? I'm not going to tell you if it does or doesn't, because I don't know what your strategy is. All I'm saying is this is what we would typically say is a hot spot. You would be buying in here to get some sort of equity to be able to go again. But we just need to get really crystal clear on how long we own this dwelling for. Ideally, if it's this pump that you want, we would have got in the last 5 years, we get in around here and then we ride it up 10, 20, 30%, 2023 to 2025, it's done probably 20, 30%. It's done probably 30% in the last 2 years. So if you would have taken that back, maybe it's 300 grand, you'd be 200 grand up, you'd be sort of, if it was sort of the prices were say $300,000 or $350,000, you've missed out on 100 or 150 grand worth of growth. So next up, to Ursad. So that's quite low compared to a lot of other regionals. Renter to owner is a little bit higher. Remember, what that means is that it is skewed towards a larger investor base. So there's 37%, I guess you could say, of investors that own here. There's no real arbitrage between 3 or 4 bedroom. There's no real arbitrage between 3 to 4 bedrooms. One little thing to sort of note now is the affordability is at 32 years to own. So that's starting to creep up. Remember, we don't like to see it too much above 35, but it tells me that there is a little bit of a margin there for this to keep growing before it becomes too unaffordable. Now, this is where the interesting stuff holds. 1.4 months worth of inventory, which is good. We can also see the stock on the market is dropping. And as I've done in my other videos, is we try to piece these together to get a little bit of a story. There is less things for sale online. There is also things for sale online is also selling quicker. Now, vacancies have been also increasing, so we need to be careful that things are. So this could be the story here. There is less things to sale online. They are selling quicker. However, is the market, because over the last sort of 12 months, 14 months, the market has been increasing. Now, the vacancies aren't huge. 10 vacancies isn't a lot across, 2,000 dwellings, 3,500 dwellings. But my question for you is going to be, is the market able to absorb the stock, and what type of people are buying here if the stuff's selling quickly and the vacancy rates are still increasing? Does that tell me that there are investors that are buying here and a lot of the stock? It's only 10 vacancies, so we need to have a look around what properties are vacant and why they are potentially vacant. Maybe there's a different story there, but here the demand is very good. The demand is very good, very low compared to its historical average and the listing. So again, will you see growth here? Definitely in the short term. Hold period as well, 10 years. No real issues there. So to sort of summarize this up, it's a regional market. You're going to see growth in the short term. Is there going to be sustained growth? That's the question, and that would lead into what is your strategy around it. Now, I want to dive a little bit into sort of around the asset and what's that doing, but I think as we can see here, the next you get 10, you get 15, you might get an extra 15-20% growth on this asset, which could be, if it's at 5 to 600 grand, could be 120 grand. So equity there nonetheless. Now this is the property, 16 Norris Road, North Mackay. If I look at the street, as you'll see, and as I always say, there's a high side of the street and then there's a low side of the street. A good question to ask yourself when you're on the low side of the street is what happens when it rains. I can see curb and gutter, which is great, and the lip on here, and this also is downhill. So it tells me a lot of the rain from the high side will be captured via the street. When I was looking through the past pictures of this house, I would say it's actually probably at its best now. It's a jungle. It was a jungle of a front yard once upon a time. So 2008, 2010, then it got worse 2016, 2019, and then 2025. So it's nice and cleaned up. No real major issues I can see from the front. It's just going to be drainage and having to think about that. Now, I know, Nancy, that you said that you had an issue with it being on a steep slope. I get you. One of the advantages you have when it is sloped like this, though, is that you have access underneath the house. So your building and pest inspector can literally go under that house and see the foundations, can look at the bathrooms, can look at all the wet areas, and really easily check if there's any rot, check if there's any leaking, check if there's any issues. The water is also going to drain, and if you think about a heavy downpour, and let's just say it floods up over, it's also going to drain down out to the back of your property and away from the house. It's not sort of sitting in and under your house. Whether or not that will be long-term maintenance, it's going to depend on the type of stumps and what they look underneath there. So what does your building inspector say there? Do they need to be re-stumped? Is there any termites? Is there any signs of rot from excess water? I can't tell that from the photos, but that's some questions that you'll need to ask them. Now, from the air, we have Mackay here. We're on the north side of the river, North Mackay. We're just borderline Mount Pleasant too. Mount Pleasant is a higher affluent area just in terms of typical pricing. What's funny is that Norris Road is actually the boundary between both of the suburbs, so you've just missed out on that. The road itself is a little bit of a main road. It is not a huge arterial road, but when you zoom out, you can sort of see that Norris Road is a connector. Same with Mackay Buck. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And same with Malcolmson Street. Whereas we like to be in these pockets here where there's not much road. So I'll let you make a decision on whether or not I think it's, and looking at the type of road too, I think you're right. It's not too busy. I can't see a street sign anywhere. Look, I go to the main road. So this is it up here. Yeah, so this is it here. One thing you just want to check on site is what's happening here. What this looks like potentially some sort of sign for something. Can't really tell. I know it's a Telstra pit, but just want to check what that is there. And the next is just checking just the flow of water down here, because there are signs that it's sloping down in under the block. We just want to make sure what's happening under the house there is okay. This is the listing, mid to high 500s. Let's go through it. Luke Curtis is the agent. It's an 800 square meter block. You guys will see this has had a renovation too. So again, not much of an issue. This has had a renovation inside. I'll show you how I noticed this, but ducted aircon, very clean, fresh new floors, and potentially a paint. Open kitchen to living. This is what we like. This is your kitchen. It's relatively nice and new. Want to make sure there's room for a fridge somewhere there. Sunroom, and/or sort of bedroom at the back. Ducted aircon. Another aircon. Another aircon. Cool. They've also redone the bathroom. Nancy, what you need to ask as well, whenever you see that there's been a bathroom renovated, you need to ask for the waterproofing certificate, because you don't know if the person that renovated this has done it the right way, or the person that renovated is one of these DIY people and they've just done it themselves, and then you're left to deal with a leaking bathroom. So I would always ask for the waterproofing certificate whenever a wet area has been redone. If they cannot provide that, then it tells me that it might be a dodgy bros type of renovation, and you're leaving yourself at the risk of needing to redo the bathroom because it leaks. This is laundry. Can't really tell. GPO cover's missing, but looks fine. Opens out onto the deck. Back deck is cool. Nice little overview. This is the backyard. So again, the water's all sort of flowing down to the rear. And there is a back shed too. That's all we have there. From an overlay perspective, there's not too much. There's obviously this open space channel behind the house. If you can't inspect that yourself, I get someone else to see what it is. It is zoned as open space. Not too sure what that means. It could just be some sort of easement or for the water to flood down and into. But the particular property that we're talking about, it last sold for $330 in 2021. So as we said, that 90% growth is prevalent because they're trying to get 500s for it. It's not bushfire. There's nothing heritage overlay. We know the topography of it. And obviously the easements, no real issue there. Another interesting thing too is I always, and don't get me wrong, when I do these videos, I do them quite quickly. I haven't been watching the area for the 4 to 6 weeks that you probably need to be. So you need to tell me if you think that price is reasonable. If we go through and have a look, so we've got $670 on a really nice renovator there. Drake $680 for a 4-bedroom. $560, $322. $560, $322. $550, $525. $410. It's a good buy, maybe. $550. So the agent, I think, said mid to high fives. Doesn't look to be too far out of what has been sold. And obviously on this side, you've got the Mount Pleasant, really expensive ones. Look at this, $1 million. Wow, $860, $700, $650. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting little pocket, especially if you can get those sorts of houses just around the corner. One thing I did notice as well, I'm just on property.com.au, and as you can see up the top here, I can go back and see the other dates of the property. So we obviously can see the 2025 listing, but the 2021 listing is the interesting part, and I'll show you why. So this is the backyard, and this is what I said. It appears these could be aluminium foundations. I'm not too sure if that's concrete poured there or not. Get your building and pest guy and make sure they get under this house. You can also have a look, but someone that is qualified to have a look at the wet areas, have a look at everything under there, will be able to tell you the story about what happens when the water comes through and comes down there. Great access, not an issue at all. One thing I did as well was just go pick by pick, because you can see what has been changed and updated. Kitchens had a fresh paint. with some changes to the cabinetry and new flooring, as you can see back here. We go to this one, new cabinetry, flooring, and the fresh paint. Back deck, bathroom. See, this is where we need to be careful here. Look at where the waste is located, and we have all this tiling and all that kind of stuff. If we go to the listing, so it tells me they've ripped out all this and they've just put this random cover over the top, and they've put this sort of tray in. It could be a home job. Definitely ask for the waterproofing certificate for the bathroom that has been renovated. Laundry, not much we can tell there. Back deck. Lol. These sorts of sunrooms. But you can see this is the main living room. It's been a different floorboard, so they've come through. This is the same room. Aircon's the same. They've just given it a fresh paint up, and they've laid some new flooring. So same with all these bedrooms. They've just put the flooring throughout. That's another look through that living and dining room. But you can see the old photos. It was different flooring, so they've went through and done a little bit of a renovation. Tried to get rid of a few of these steps here. A little bit of mold, but yeah, there you go. So aluminium, concrete. That looks okay, but get a building and pest guy on that just to have a look. So that's all the photos. And I go to 2020. We go even further back. But look, to summarize this particular deal, Nancy, it's going to depend on what your strategy is. But I do think there is still room for some short-term capital growth on this property in the double digits. I would, in terms of the maintenance, being on a sloped block sometimes, in my opinion, is not an issue because you have access. Now, if you think about it, if you're on a flat block and you had a concrete slab and you had issues with access and you would need to go back and, redo a bathroom, it's a lot more work on a concrete slab than it is if you can get access underneath it, especially with moving drainage points and all that kind of stuff. So protect yourself, get the building and pest, get that inspector to get under the house. Get there yourself if you can as well. Look for that rot, that signs of leaking. Get the certificate for the waterproofing of the bathroom. And then you tell me, is the goal to just buy this, get some short-term growth, and then be able to invest elsewhere? Just because I think there's still a little bit of room. I think there's still a little bit of room in this market for some short-term growth, and then maybe that 5 or average afterwards. So if that was the goal, then yeah, go for it. But yeah, protect yourself. And I think with maintenance and all that kind of stuff, if it's had new floors, fresh coat of paint, you save yourself a lot of time. Kitchen looks in good nick. If the bathroom was done right, you're not going to have too many maintenance issues, and you're not going to have too much. You're not going to have too much to worry about, provided there's no termites and the water's been draining effectively throughout the bottom of that house. So look, hopefully, bit of value in there for you today. Some things to think about, some research and DD to continue to do. But yeah, best of luck with if this is fits what that strategy is for the property. And as always, I'll see you guys tomorrow.